It's a Tuesday. You're on your way home from work. You stop at the Shell on the corner of your street. The one you stop at every Tuesday. The one you know so well you don't even look at the price anymore. You just pull in, swipe your card, and wait. But today, something makes you look up at the sign. $3.32. You do the math in your head. You drive a Honda CR-V, fills up at about 14 gallons. That's $46.48. Last month, it was closer to $40. And 2 weeks ago, it was $2.98. 34 cents per gallon in 1 week. You don't say anything. You swipe the card, you fill up, you drive home. But somewhere in the back of your head, a quiet question starts forming. Not about the price, about why. Why now? Why this week? Why did something change? Here's the answer, and most people don't know this. The price of that tank of gas went up because of decisions made in a room you were never invited into. A military room, a geopolitical room, a room where your paycheck doesn't come up once in the entire conversation. What you just paid at that pump is what I'm going to call the Iran war gas tax. It doesn't appear on any receipt. There's no line item. Nobody sent you a bill, but you're already paying it. If this kind of connection between what's happening in the news and what's happening to your money is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, hit subscribe. This channel exists for exactly that. Here's what most people think happened this week. They think there's a war in the Middle East, oil prices went up, gas got more expensive. End of story. Basic supply and demand. Nothing to understand here. But that explanation skips about 4 layers of mechanics that actually determine how much money leaves your pocket. And when you understand those layers, you realize this isn't just about gas. This is about groceries. This is about your electricity bill. This is about the cost of everything that gets delivered to your door. Let me explain what actually happened. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a joint military operation against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. Within hours, Iran's supreme leader was reported dead, and Iran's response was immediate: missile and drone strikes against U.S. military bases across the Gulf, attacks on oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and one chilling announcement from Iran's Revolutionary Guard over maritime radio. No ship is permitted to pass the Strait of Hormuz. Now, most people hear Strait of Hormuz and think geography, something far away, something that has nothing to do with them. Here's what it actually is. There's a concept in economics called a choke point economy, the idea that the entire output of a region can be bottlenecked through a single geographic passage. The Strait of Hormuz is the most consequential example of this on Earth. It was first studied systematically by Philip K. Verlaerger during the Arab oil embargo, and his core insight was this: in a choke point economy, whoever controls the passage controls the price. That passage is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. And through those 21 miles, every single day, flows roughly 20 million barrels of oil, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That's about 20% of all petroleum consumed on Earth every day. As of this week, that flow has stopped. Over 150 tankers are sitting anchored in open Gulf waters, unable to move. Major shipping companies, MSC, Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, have suspended transits. War risk insurance premiums have exploded, and the pipeline that feeds the global economy is right now at a standstill. This is not an abstraction. This is the mechanism by which a military decision made in Washington on a Saturday morning became a $46 tank of gas on your Tuesday evening. But here's what most people miss, and this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Gas is just the beginning, and the math will show you exactly why. Let's start with what you can already see. On February 26th, 2 days before the strikes, the national average for a gallon of regular gasoline was $2.98, according to AAA. That was the lowest it had been in over a year. Trump had actually used that number in his State of the Union address weeks earlier as proof his energy policy was working. By March 6th, 6 days after the war started, that number was $3.32, an increase of 34 cents in 1 week, the fastest single-week spike since Russia invaded Ukraine in March 2022, according to AAA. Now let's do the household math on that. The average American household owns 2 cars. The average car has a 13-gallon tank. The average driver fills up roughly once a week. 2 cars times 13 gallons times 34 cents increase equals $8.84 more per household per week, equals $35 more per month, equals $420 more per year.
That's not a typo. $420 a year without a single change to your driving habits, simply because a war started 8 time zones away. And that's just the direct number. That's not the full bill. Here's where it gets darker. The price of diesel fuel, not the gas you put in your car, but the fuel that powers every truck, every freight vehicle, every delivery that arrives at your door, is tracking the same spike. GasBuddy projected the diesel could rise from $3.71 to $4.25 or even $4.45 per gallon if the disruption continues. That's a jump of up to 74 cents per gallon. Now you might say, I don't drive a diesel truck. Why does this affect me? Because everything you buy was transported by one. Let me show you what that actually looks like. A standard 18-wheeler gets about 6 miles per gallon and drives roughly 500 miles per delivery route. At the current diesel price increase, 500 miles divided by 6 miles per gallon equals 83 gallons per route. 83 gallons times $0.74 increase equals $61 more per delivery route. That cost gets passed to the distributor. The distributor passes it to the retailer. The retailer passes it to you at the grocery store, at Target, at Amazon checkout. A 2019 study by researchers at the University of Chicago found that a 10% increase in oil prices translates to approximately a 0.4% increase in consumer goods prices across the board. That sounds small. It isn't. The American household spends about $61,000 per year on goods and services. A 0.4% increase is $244 per year before you count anything else. Think about that for a second. You're paying the war tax at the grocery store too. You just can't see it on the label. But here's what really gets me, and most people have absolutely no idea this exists. According to the trade analysis firm Kepler, approximately 33% of the world's fertilizers, including the sulfur and ammonia that American farmers put on corn, wheat, and soybean fields, travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar, which just shut down its LNG production facilities after Iranian drone strikes, is also one of the world's largest producers of ammonia-based fertilizers. When Qatar goes offline, fertilizer prices go up. When fertilizer prices go up, farmers' input costs go up. When input costs go up, food prices go up, about 6 to 9 months later when the next harvest cycle hits. We're not just talking about gas anymore. We're talking about the price of a loaf of bread in November. Let me make this concrete. The average American family of 4 spends about $1,100 per month on groceries, according to the USDA. If food prices rise 8%, a conservative estimate from food industry analysts given a sustained supply disruption, that's $1,100 times 8% equals $88 more per month, equals $1,056 more per year, on top of the $420 at the gas pump. That's $1,476 per year from one war that you didn't vote on. Let that sink in. Now here's the part that most financial channels skip entirely, and I think it's the most important number in this whole conversation. You're not just paying the war tax at the pump and the grocery store, you're paying it directly through your federal taxes. The Pentagon has circulated a preliminary estimate of approximately $1 billion per day for the cost of Operation Epic Fury, according to congressional officials cited by The Atlantic. The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated the first 100 hours alone cost $3.7 billion. The Penn-Wharton budget model, one of the most respected fiscal analysis institutions in the country, projects total direct military costs between $40 billion and $95 billion if the operation concludes within 2 months. There are approximately 150 million individual tax filers in the United States. $40 billion divided by 150 million taxpayers equals $267 per taxpayer, low-end estimate. $95 billion divided by 150 million taxpayers equals $633 per taxpayer, high-end estimate. And that's not counting the economic ripple effects. When you fold in trade disruptions, energy shocks, and broader financial instability, Penn Wharton estimates total economic impact could reach $210 billion. $210 billion. Divided among 150 million taxpayers, that's $1,400 per person. There's a scene playing out right now where Congress is simultaneously debating cuts to Medicaid, food assistance, and housing support, programs that directly help the people who are about to get hit hardest by this war's economic fallout. At the same time, the Defense Department is reportedly working on an emergency supplemental request for upwards of $50 billion in additional spending. The Iraq War, for reference, ultimately cost close to $3 trillion when all costs were accounted for, according to Brown University's Costs of War project. This is where I get genuinely frustrated. Not at any one person, not at any one political party, but at the structure of how these decisions get made and who ends up holding the bill. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's a school administrator in Columbus, Ohio. She makes $58,000 a year. She has 2 kids, a 2019 Honda Pilot, and she drives 32 miles round trip to work every day. Last Monday, she filled up her tank, $52. She noticed it was higher than usual but figured it would go back down. It always does. Thursday, she stopped at Kroger for the weekly grocery run. Her usual cart came to $214. Last month, it was $198. She stood at the self-checkout wondering if she'd bought something different and then remembered she hadn't. On Friday, she got her electric bill, up 11% from last month, partly because natural gas prices that feed power plants have spiked alongside oil. Sarah didn't make a single financial decision differently this week. She just paid $73 more than the week before, without anyone asking her permission. By the end of 2026, if this disruption persists, Sarah is looking at an extra $1,400 to $1,800 out of pocket, not because she overspent, not because she made bad decisions, because of a military operation she first heard about on a Saturday morning news alert. This is the part most financial content never says out loud. What happened to your gas price this week is not a natural disaster. It is not a random market fluctuation. It is not bad luck or economic cycles or anything you could have prepared for. It is the direct financial consequence of a military decision made by fewer than a dozen people, none of whom were thinking about your gas budget when they made it. This isn't your fault. This is by design. Not by malice, but by a system that is structurally built to externalize the cost of geopolitical decisions onto individual households. Here's how the system works. A military operation is authorized. It costs, in this case, an estimated $1 billion per day. That money doesn't come from a war fund. It comes from the federal budget, the same budget that's funded by your income taxes. The operation disrupts global oil supply. Oil prices spike. That spike flows immediately to gas stations, then with a slight delay to grocery stores, then with a longer delay to utility bills and consumer goods. By the time the full cost reaches your household, it's distributed across dozens of different transactions, invisible, deniable, untraceable to any single decision. The system relies on that invisibility. If your gas pump showed a message that said, "This 34-cent increase is directly attributable to Operation Epic Fury, authorized February 28, 2026, the political calculus would be different. But it doesn't. It just says $3.32. Companies in the energy sector bank on this opacity. Defense contractors depend on the public not doing this math. The financial industrial complex is not incentivized to connect these dots for you. That's not a conspiracy. It's just that no one profits from you understanding the full picture. Here's what really gets me. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll conducted in the first 2 days of this operation, just 25% of Americans supported the strikes, 1 in 4. Yet 100% of American taxpayers and consumers will absorb the economic consequences. You're not financially illiterate for not seeing this. You're human. The mechanism is genuinely obscure. But I want to be very clear. The gap between who makes these decisions and who pays for them is not an accident. It is a structural feature of how military and fiscal policy interact in this country. In 5 years, if this conflict persists or triggers a prolonged oil disruption, the person who understood this mechanism in March 2026 will have made fundamentally different financial decisions than the person who didn't. That gap compounds. So, what do you actually do? The answer is not move off the grid, sell your car, and stop using money. The answer is understand the transmission mechanism and insulate yourself where you can, because you can't stop the wave, but you can change how it hits you.
Here are 4 concrete moves. Strategy 1. The gas timing arbitrage. Gas stations update their prices based on wholesale cost changes, which typically flow through on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. GasBuddy data consistently shows that Monday and Tuesday mornings tend to have slightly lower prices than Thursday and Friday afternoons. This isn't a huge saving per fill-up, maybe $1.50 to $3, but if you fill up 50 times a year, that's $75 to $150 annually with zero lifestyle change. You're just filling up on a different day. Pair this with apps like GasBuddy or the Upside app, which give you real-time price comparisons by zip code. In a normal week, the variance between the cheapest and most expensive station in a given city is about 20 cents. Right now, during a price spike, that variance widens. The app takes 30 seconds to check. It costs nothing. Strategy 2, the grocery buffer. When energy disruptions hit, the food categories that spike first are anything transported by refrigerated truck over long distances. Produce, dairy, imported goods. The categories that spike last, or not at all, are dry staples: rice, pasta, beans, canned goods. A household that spends 2 or 3 weeks building a modest pantry buffer, stocking up on staples now before the full fuel cost hits the supply chain, is essentially buying groceries at February prices in March. This isn't hoarding, this is basic economic timing. Spend $80 to $120 now on non-perishables you would have bought anyway. Spend less in 4 months when those prices are higher. Strategy 3, the energy hedge. If you have a 401k or any investment account, look at your sector allocation. Energy stocks, companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips, tend to benefit directly from oil price spikes. Defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, historically outperform during active military operations. You're already paying the war tax as a consumer. There's no rule that says you can't also receive some of it back as an investor. This isn't speculation. It's recognizing that when some parts of your financial life go up in cost, you can structure other parts of your financial life to offset that. Strategy 4, the fixed rate lock. Oil price spikes have historically pushed the Federal Reserve toward more caution on rate cuts or, in worst-case scenarios, triggered rate hikes to fight the resulting inflation. If you have variable rate debt, a credit card you're carrying a balance on, a HELOC, an adjustable rate mortgage, this is the moment to look hard at locking into fixed rates. The window between when a commodity shock starts and when it fully flows through to Fed policy is typically 3 to 6 months. You may still have time. Look, I won't tell you any of this is easy. You're being asked to make financial decisions in real time during an event that's moving faster than any of us can fully track. That's genuinely difficult. The playing field here is not even. But you're not powerless either. Understanding the mechanism is the first move. Every strategy above flows from that understanding. You're not bad with money because gas costs $3.32 this week. You're a person living inside a system that doesn't explain its own costs. That's a different problem, and it has different solutions. If this video helped you connect dots you hadn't connected before, share it with someone who's also feeling it at the pump and wondering why. The more people who understand this mechanism, the better. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.